Last time I introduced one of my patent pending lists, the 3 M's of webcomics: making them, marketing them, and monetizing them. And I briefly spoke about making comics, which is a longer, more wordy version of fucking do it. So today I wanted to talk about marketing webcomics. Now, with everything that I talk about on my channel in regards to making art, making comics, and putting stuff out there, take it with many grains of salt. What works for me won't necessarily work for you. If some of the things I have to say are helpful to your workflow and to your process, that's awesome. But this is by no means like, you must follow what I have to say. Also, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out how to monetize my work effectively so that I can make a living doing what I truly enjoy and have a great passion for. And I'm not quite there yet. So clearly, I've thrown many things at the wall and failed at a lot of them. But a lot of what I talk about, a lot of my ideas on marketing and monetizing and making comics come from, years of experience of being in the field, in the weeds of things, and putting stuff out there, trying things, failing at things, trying projects, failing at projects, quitting things, starting things. And I've been doing this since like early 2000s. So I've been around webcomics for a long time, and I kind of have seen things that work for many people. And so that's where a lot of this is coming from. So if it's helpful, again, awesome. If it's not helpful, I'm sorry I've wasted your time. So I want to cover marketing things that you can do that just take time, that don't require any money. And then I want to switch to things that actually do take a little bit of financing, with one caveat. When you get to the point that you're comfortable making your comics and putting them out there and getting them up and really pushing forward, and you've decided that I love doing this shit and I can't think of anything else that I want to do, it's time to buy a URL. You don't have to get hosting. You can forward that URL to a site like Tumblr or Blogger, and you can still use that to host all of your content. Like the Nomlings, which is my dumpling comic that I haven't updated since the new year because of baby and stuff. But nomlings.com forwards to nomlings.tumblr.com. So I host the comic. The back end, Tumblr takes care of all that. So I post the images there and work that out. So you could do something similar like that. You don't have to spend a lot of money on hosting. Hosting is cheap these days. But I mean, if you're strapped for cash, if you're just starting out, if you don't have a lot of money or spare cash to spend on your hobby, then you don't have to worry about hosting things and learning FTP and all that kind of bullshit. You could just buy a domain and forward it to a place that already hosts images for you, like Blogger or something like that. So before you start anything, buy a domain. It sucks to say that you have to buy in to get started with your webcomicking career, but you kind of have to. And honestly, if you're putting stuff on the web, it means you have access to something like a computer or a scanner or the internet. So you've already spent money on stuff. I mean, you use your computer and your internet for other things like reading other people's webcomics. But yeah, you've spent money already. So spending like $8 a year for a .com or something like that isn't that much more. So get yourself a domain. All right, so marketing these days, getting your work out there, being a web cartoonist, it's more about building yourself as a personal brand, like putting yourself out there. So if you're already on Tumblr, if you're already on Facebook, you've already got a sort of online personality, and you can use that to sort of build up your webcomic around what you're doing, because you might get tired of your one project and decide that you want to try something else. I've gone through like 4 or 5 different webcomics, but I have fans who have followed me through every step of the way. They've followed my work from, the early days of Titanium Moose, which is fucking awful, but they've stuck with me since then because, I've branded myself mostly by accident as a cartoonist, someone who's done this online. So, it's difficult to kind of sometimes you want a separation between your personal life and what you are trying to do professionally. But as a cartoonist, I find that these days it's more about the individual than it is necessarily about the property. Like people recognize me from the channel here, Super Art Fight, and then sometimes the comic, and they all kind of relate to each other. They all kind of combine into this entity that is me, I guess. So certainly social media is a big component of getting your work in front of people, of building an audience, having a conversation, things like that. Twitter, I find Twitter to be pretty effective at just stream of consciousness, putting stuff out there. Now, you don't want to find yourself in the position of, like, if you're just starting out, I guess you might want to create a Twitter for your own comic and then have a personal Twitter where you say stupid stuff about, like, sports or, I just took a really great shit, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily want to build an audience off of that. I don't keep them separate. I keep my personal Twitter is the account that I use for all of my stuff. So if I'm posting a webcomic, that's what I do. If I'm performing at a show, I use my personal Twitter. You don't want to, if you do set one up for your comic, you don't want to get in the habit of just constantly saying, hey, I updated a comic. Hey, I updated a comic. Hey, I updated a comic. I mean, Twitter is good for those short blasts of information, but it's also it also can give people an insight to your personality. So the way I've seen other successful web cartoonists use Twitter, Danielle Corsetto is a great example. Every Tuesday she does something called TMI Tuesday, where she reveals very intimate and personal details about her sex life. And a lot of people have found her comic just from reading her TMI Tuesdays. They'll follow her because, oh, here's this cool girl telling us all these very intimate details about her personal life. Oh shit, she does a webcomic. Let me check that out. For her fans who are currently reading her comic, they love it because they get to know a little bit more about Danielle. And if you follow her Twitter feed, it's, she'll maybe talk about, hey, I posted a comic, but then the rest of her feed is all about things that she enjoys, things that she's into. She talks to friends about stuff that they like. So, it's a real conversation thread. It's not just advertising the comic. Let's see, Rich Stevens uses Twitter very effectively. He puts out, he's constantly on Twitter, throwing out jokes to see if they work. It's sort of like his own stand-up comedy platform. And then every once in a while there'll be say, hey, I updated my comic. But these are two creators that use Twitter very effectively. And it's not just to advertise their stuff. It's also to talk about things that they have passion for. And if you talk passionately about something, you're going to find people who have a similar passion. Like, my Twitter feed is filled with mostly Kamen Rider and Super Sentai talk. If I'm watching, Kamen Rider Gaim or something crazy happens, I'll go to Twitter. Holy shit, I can't believe they transformed and all that stuff. So you build a personality, an online personality that way. Twitter is great for, like, just stream of consciousness, quick blasts and stuff. You can't necessarily measure the ROI, the return on investment, the time that you put into Twitter, but it's 140 characters. It doesn't take that long to compose a tweet. Now, if you find it too stressful to kind of sit there and come up with something clever every day, maybe Twitter isn't for you. Maybe something else is for you. Facebook is another no-brainer when it comes to social marketing. I don't feel like I use my Facebook page effectively for Yellow Peril. But what I've seen other people do is they use their Facebook feed. They use their Facebook page to sort of talk about things that are related to their work. So let's say you do a comic about bike messaging or something like that. On your Facebook page, you can also you can connect with other bike manufacturers or people who are experts in the field or who talk a lot about bike messaging and things like that. And then, when you're not posting on your non-posting comic days, You can update things like, here's an interesting article I found about bike messaging, or here's another article I found about like bike maintenance, or stuff like that. Things that are related to your comic, so that people will get value when they go to your Facebook page. It's not just going to be like, oh, here's the links to the comics. It'll be something really valuable. Here's our resources. Here are things and articles that I haven't read before, and that might encourage other people to share those kind of things like that. So don't just the bottom line is, don't just use social media as a pushing advertising thing. If you're gonna market your stuff, give something of value. Whether it's information about yourself, or information about your process, or information related to whatever your specific genre is, use social media to give value to your readers. So, you know, maybe your readers find value in like following your process and things like that. So another effective way to market your stuff is to this thing, YouTube channel. YouTube is one of the highest, one of the most often used search engines for just about anything. I've actually met people at cons who have found my comic through my YouTube channel, and I don't have that many subscribers. So if you get like 1 or 2 people looking at your comic because of something that you put up on YouTube, that's awesome. And YouTube is relatively straightforward to use. If you've got a cell phone, if you've got a laptop, chances are you've got a camera built in, so you don't have to pay anything. Just, you know, say something, blog about something, vlog about something, and stick it up on YouTube. It doesn't have to be great. You don't have to edit anything. I don't edit shit. I just turn on the camera and start talking. If you want to build a proper YouTube presence, possibly you may want to learn how to do these things like edit and shit like that, but you don't have to. You could talk about something that you have passion for. It just so happens that I have passion for making comics and drawing comics and sharing that. And so those are the things I talk about on the channel. And from there, people have seen my work through this thing. So, you know, social media, YouTube, these are all very easy things that you can do. They just take time. No money involved. Another thing you can do is, if you're active on any online forum that's related to whatever it is your comic is about. The most obvious one is gaming. So there are a lot of gaming forums out there, and if there are blogs or forums that you hang out at, and your comic is related to gaming, you can definitely put your URL in your signature. But if there's like a topic that people are talking about, and you just so happen to have written a comic based on that, you'd be like, oh, hey, look, I did a comic about this thing that we're all talking about. Check it out. That kind of stuff. Again, don't spam the forum with, hey, look at my fucking comic, because you'll most likely get kicked off or banned. But if you're active on an online place already, you probably have some cachet with that audience, with those other forum members. So, you know, you can build off of that, and you say, hey, you know, I like hanging out here, but I've also done this other thing. Maybe you want to check it out. So there are probably a lot of other online things that you could do that don't take a lot of time, but social media, YouTube, and forums, those are pretty much the 3 big ones for monetizing or for marketing your stuff for free. Now, sometimes you will have to spend a little money to reach a new audience, and this is where so I want to talk about things that you can do marketing wise that cost a little bit of money, and most of this has to do with going out to conventions. Actually, let me rewind. We'll end with conventions, but in between free stuff and conventions, there's advertising. You can buy advertising. I have not personally used this to at all, just because I haven't. No real reason. I haven't tried it yet. But advertising, buying ads on other people's sites can be an effective way to get a traffic boost. Whether or not that traffic boost stays whether or not those people that go to your site from an ad are the valuable readers that you're able to cultivate and build into an audience, and convince them to buy stuff from you. That's a different story. But if you want eyeballs, certainly advertising on other webcomics is a great way to do it. Project Wonderful happens to be one of the most effective ways to get your banner on some very prominent webcomics. You'll have to go around and check out and see if some of your favorite comics are running Project Wonderful ads. I know Girls with Slingshots has a bunch of Project Wonderful spots that you can bid on and get your stuff in front of Danielle's audience, which is awesome. She has some of the nicest readers. So if you can go out there, find comics that are related to your comic. Let's say your comic is about coffee. You want to check out comics that are related to office work or hipster things, like the bike messaging. Advertise on the bike messaging comic. But Project Wonderful is great. I don't use it for advertising, but you can set your campaign, like I only want to spend $30 for this campaign, and send it out there, and use Project Wonderful. Now, they're not a lot. Some of the bigger names in webcomics have kind of switched their ads to a different network, so you got to kind of do a little bit more digging to figure out which comics are using Project Wonderful. But if they are, that's a really great way to not, you don't have to spend too much money to get eyes on your stuff. Facebook advertising actually is pretty effective. I've clicked on a couple of ads that are related to guitar stuff because I'm obsessed with guitars and things like that. And Facebook collects so much information about you that it's very easy to really target your specific reader. So if you know that your reader is a coffee drinker, someone who likes office humor, rides bikes, basically if you're Ross Nover, you can buy ads and tailor your campaign to target people that you want. You got to kind of play with the system because you can go too narrow. But the great thing about webcomics is, if you have a very narrow genre, you can really cultivate a very powerful audience just by focusing on that one small little thing. And Facebook is a great way to find those people because there's just so much information about us on Facebook. So Facebook ads are a really great way to just target those specific people. So those are the two advertising avenues that I would attempt if this was something that I was good at. I don't think I'm very good at writing ad copy, so I don't do it. But if you're good at coming up with catchy things that'll draw people's attention, go for it. Facebook and Project Wonderful. All right, so we'll end with conventions because meeting people face to face and networking with your fellow creators is probably one of the most powerful marketing tools in your toolbox. Now, this means that you have to go out in public, and this means you have to be comfortable with talking to other people. But it just takes practice. So it doesn't seem like it, but I'm pretty shy around new people. I'm not very good at small talk. I'm not very good at meeting new people. But over the years, I've done enough of these shows where I'm more comfortable in new situations where I don't know anyone in the room. It takes practice. So if you're just starting out, if you're really bad with meeting people in person, if you're really bad with crowds, if you're not good at that shit, don't worry. None of us are perfect when it comes to that, except for, again, Ross Nover. He's really good at meeting people in person. But it just takes practice, and it takes a concerted effort, and it's tough, and it sucks. But once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. Going to shows is second nature to me now. It's like no big deal. Meeting people that I've never met before. That's pretty, it's pretty straightforward. Didn't always used to be. It used to freak the shit out of me. So if you're going to go to a convention, realize that you will not make money until you've been doing it for a while. it might take, 2 years for you to start making money at shows. It might take you 10 years to start making money on shows. But the main reason you go to shows these days is to meet fellow creators and to get your work out in front of other people. So the first thing you need to do is get yourself a whole bunch of business cards. Just like a big, stupid, stinking box of business cards. Overnight prints, they offer discounts, every other day. Every month there's a new discount. Every week there's a new discount. Overnight prints, get yourself some business cards. It could have, your name and your URL, and that's it, or your name, your URL, and an email or something like that. But just get a fucking business card out there. They spend the money, buy a stack of 500 business cards, put your shit on there. When I design my business cards, I've got my logo, I've got my name on there, and I've got my URL and email address, and then I have a tag about the comic. So Yellow Peril, an Asian American office romance comedy. So you know what this fucking card is. It's not just a symbol. So when it comes to designing your card, make it simple, make it eye-catching, but also put some real information on there. Don't just put a pen-up of your main character with her tits hanging out. That's great. Drawing tits is fun, but it's not useful as a marketing tool. You want to put some information so that when somebody's going through their stack of cards that they got at the con, they remember, aha, I know what this is, because there's more than just tits. It's your URL and something about your comic. Okay, so stack of webcomics. Stack of business cards. Take them with you wherever you go. You don't even have to buy admission to a show. You don't even have to buy a table at a show. You could just walk around and hand out your comics, your card. Sometimes there are tables where you can just put stacks of free stuff, so you can put your card there. Generally, though, if you're going to a show, you want a table. And I know that sucks because, there's the wait list to get on to buy a table. Some cons are more expensive than others. Chances are there's a local show in your area that you really haven't heard about, but they have pretty affordable tables. So around Free Comic Book Day, there are a lot of local shows that cater to local cartoonists. So if you're able to hook up with your local comic book shop around this time and say, hey, do you do a Free Comic Book Day thing? Hey, I'd like to do a signing, or I'd like to promote my stuff. Chances are they'd be welcome to have you. Sometimes there are local comic shows or local web cartooning shows or local conventions that are starting up. So do some research and look for local stuff, because this is about spending money, but if you could spend less money and just go to a local show, that's great, because you don't have to worry about getting a hotel or staying someplace or renting a car or buying anything. But yeah, if you're going to get out there, find a local show that you can afford. Now, when it comes to tabling, you want to try to meet your table neighbors, because they're probably in a similar position as you. They're probably trying to get their work out there. They're probably trying to network with other creators. And so meeting other creators at conventions is probably one of the most useful marketing activities you can do. Super Art Fight would not be here were it not for the fact that all of us do conventions. We all met on the convention circuit. We all did things together at conventions, and somehow it evolved into this weird ass thing called Super Art Fight. And that's because we do shows. We do shows and we meet each other and we hang out with each other, and it's an important thing to do. Costs a lot of money, man. Costs a lot of money. Going to shows costs a lot of money, because you got to buy merchandise, you got to buy your table, sometimes you got to buy a badge, sometimes you got to buy an Artist Alley badge as well as a table. I don't know. It sucks. It sucks. It costs a lot of money, and you're going to be in the red for a good long time. But if you're putting time on the circuit and you're meeting other creators, you're building your voice in the community. You're building your expertise in the community. You're building a network around you, so that when it comes time to do things like if you want to launch a Kickstarter, you can say, hey, I'm launching a Kickstarter. Any advice? You can ask your fellow cartooning friends and really have a network around you of people that are willing to help out and do that kind of stuff. So going to shows is tremendously important, and it costs a lot of money. I'm really sorry about that, but you know, meeting people face to face is much different than meeting them online. You know, hanging out with people online, that's great and all, but you know, your fellow cartoonists are hungry to share ideas and to hang out with you and to learn about what you're doing and share. So go out there and try your best to meet your fellow cartoonists. It's tough. Now, it doesn't have to be at a show. Sometimes there are local cartooning groups in your area, and they meet often enough that you can hang out and show up and say, hey, I'm new here, I'm new here. But you have to have your business cards, so definitely buy your business cards before you go to anything like that. But yeah, meeting people in person kind of sucks if you're not good at it, but it's still one of the best ways to get the word out about your stuff and to tell people that you're a creator and to get your work out in front of people. So hopefully some of this was helpful. Convention strategy is an entirely different topic, and I've talked about it in the past, and I'll probably talk about it in the future, so I just wanted to briefly touch upon it. But these were some ideas that you could use for getting your work out there. Free ideas, things that you need to spend money on. So next time I will talk about monetization, and hopefully I'll have some good things to say about that. If any of this was helpful for you, that's awesome. If you have other ideas for marketing your work, please let me know in the comments wherever you see this. And I'll check you next time. Thanks for sitting through this and watching. Bye.